Gertin, and I'm a Danbury resident. I'm lucky enough to be able to do something I absolutely love, which is work at the Danbury Museum Historical Society. And my educational background is that I went to Danbury schools. I went to St. Peter's down the road. I'll tell you guys what my background. And then I went to Marymount College in Tarrytown, New York. I have a bachelor's in history with a minor in women's studies and Asian film. Just because. And then I went on to graduate work at George Washington University and have a master's in museum studies with a focus on conservation and nonprofit financial management. So I was lucky enough to be able to come back to my hometown, which not most of us are not. So I consider myself blessed to work at the Danbury Museum. And I was very, very excited to be able to share some of the things that we're doing at the museum with you here today. Conservation and preservation of documents it's so important. You know, if we don't save what we love and treasure, the next generation won't have access to that. And when we lose pieces of history all the time. So the fact that so many of you are here and excited about conserving your bits and pieces of family history and ephemera makes me glad that we have all of these wonderful resources that you can take advantage of to do that. How many of you are collectors?
Pack rats.
I use the nice term.
Yes.
I prefer collectors to pack rats, but yes, that's what some of us, and I'll include myself in that, end up being. And you know, when we're collecting and when we're finding the pieces that we'd like to save, we're getting a connection with them. Correct? What do you collect?
I collect quite a few things, stamps and normal stuff.
Stamps. Okay.
Fabric.
Well, the first step, I think, in understanding the conservation and preservation needs of your pieces is truly assessing your collection, how big it is, what type of material are you using. And for the purposes of today's discussion, I'm going to be a little bit general, and then I'm going to focus in a little bit on ephemeral items and photographs. But in a general sense, the things that we collect, knowing what we're going to collect and the space that we're going to store them or preserve them in, is number one on the road to preservation. So, for instance, if you have a stamp collection, and I'm gonna pick on you because you were so vocal. So, thank you. If you have a stamp collection, where would you be storing that in your house? Would it be something that you would display all the time, or is it something that you'd like to?
Oh no,
in the closet?
it's on a book. It's on bookshelves.
Okay.
In albums.
In albums.
Yeah.
Okay. And where in your house is it? Is it on your main level?
No, it's on the next floor.
When we're assessing our collections, one of the very first things we need to do is A, determine what it is that we're collecting, B, what kind of space in terms of size that we need, and C, where we can best store it in our own homes. For those of you who have multi-level homes, the best place to store your collection, especially if it's ephemeral in nature, is where?
Where you live.
Where you live. That main floor. That main floor is most likely going to have consistent temperatures. It's not going to have wild fluctuations in humidity for the most part. Those are two of the things that you have to be most wary of. Major changes in temperature, fluctuation in humidity, and of course, death to most ephemeral items, that big great ball in the sky, sunlight. So when you're assessing your collection, you figured out your stamps that you would like to put, and either you're going to display them or you're going to store them. You probably want to put them on a level in your home that's accessible so that you can get at your collection and look at it, because I don't know about you guys, but I like to play with our bits and pieces. So you want to be able to access it, but you also want to make sure that it's going to be in a place that won't be damp. For those of you who have your collection stored in the basement, I would strongly suggest that if you can't store them on your main level, that at least you put them up in the attic. I would prefer dry to moist. The damage that massive variations in humidity can do to ephemeral items is tremendous, but that includes most material culture as well. So your sofas and your beautiful antique chairs and maybe the hair wreath, because we have one at the museum, which I think is really cool, that's been passed down after generation, will not do well in a basement environment. So we've covered the basics, but a lot of conservation and preservation work is intuitive. I'm sure most of you knew that your special items shouldn't go in the basement, right? And I'm sure most of you knew that they shouldn't go in the attic. And you've probably stored them as close to you as you possibly can in the area in which you live. Over the years, since we've become enamored of preservation methodology, we've done lots of different things to preserve our collections. And looking back, hindsight is 20/20, and we can say, oh my gosh, no, you didn't encase them in plastic totally. No, you know, like, oh, we can say all the things that people might have done wrong in the past, but they did the best that they could. So if you were handed a collection that was stapled to a piece of cardboard, or
Scotch
glued,
tape.
or scotch tape, or glued, or, God, this is what kills me the most when we get these at the museum, the binders full of beautiful photographs that are in those, the sticky, with the sticky backs. Ooh, ouch. You know, these things happen, but at the time that these methods were introduced, that was the best.
Yeah.
That was what we knew. So, you know, I don't like to look back and say, oh no, they shouldn't have done it. I'd like to look forward and say, this is what we can do so that the next generation doesn't say, oh my gosh, they shouldn't have done that. What we try to do with a collection, and what I would suggest that you do, is remove anything you can from a negative, that is negative. So for instance, if you have paper clips or staples holding your collection together, if you can take them out without damaging your collection, that would be super. If your collection is stored, if it's ephemeral in nature and it is glued to a piece of cardboard, if you can lift it from the cardboard, that would be great. If you can't, that's okay too. But if you'd like to take a step forward and try and get those pictures or postcards out of the blinders that they're in, then you've actually made a really good step forward. You've taken your pieces to the middle of your home. You've put them in an area where you can access them and you can keep an eye on them. You've taken them out of the unfortunate conservation methods that were used in the past. And now you're ready to take the next step, which is moving into archival preservation. So actually I have one of these for each of you.
Thank you. We can share one.
Okay. Now, there are, thank you. There are many archival preservation stores, if you will. Brodart is a very popular one. Gaylord, which is the magazine that we're passing out, is very popular archival source material. There are so many different catalogs you can order from, but for the most part, the catalogs can help the average person preserve and protect in a very simple way. If you have an item of tremendous value, either personal value or intrinsic value, and that it might be worth thousands of dollars or more to a collector, and you would like to attempt some preservation effort, I would very much suggest that you go ahead to one of the major preservation groups in the U.S., like Northeast Document Conservation Center. They're from Massachusetts, and they can take your ephemeral items and they can do beautiful work. They can bring them back to the original. If you have a textile-based item, I don't know if anyone collects quilts or fiber arts. Yes. Okay. Then do you know about the lab over in South Salem?
I've not been there, but I've heard of it.
It's tremendous.
What is that, Bridget?
There is a textile conservation lab right over the border in South Salem, New York, and they offer the preservation of fiber arts. So for instance, if you had your grandfather, great-great-grandfather's shirt, great-great-great-grandfather's shirt from the Civil War, and it was a very special piece to your family, but you noticed that it was really fraying, or it had been attacked by any of the various pests that can attack the wonderful things that we collect. If it's something of tremendous value that you would like to keep in your family and you're willing to spend the money, I would suggest you have it treated in a textile conservation lab, of which there are several in the Northeast. The closest one, of course, is right over the border in South Salem.
What is the name of that one, please?
South Salem Textile Conservation. It's very,
Yeah, too easy.
just like the Northeast Document Conservation Center, they take their names from what they did. So I would suggest that if you have, those items, that it's worth it looking for professional help. But if you don't have the money or the inclination to preserve something, or the items that that you'd like to preserve are not in bad shape, then I would suggest that you start flipping through the magazine that I just handed you and kind of decide what kind of preservation methodologies you would like to do. Would you like to go whole hog? You can do spraying, you can do all sorts of different things to keep your pieces safe. But the very simplest The very easiest thing that you can do is buy some of the materials we have here. Does anybody know what this is? A box.
Archival safe.
Archivally safe. pH neutral, lignin free. I think this is a lignin free. I'd have to check on that. But pH neutral, this box is actually a great step towards preserving your pieces. How many of you have your items stored in regular cardboard? Okay. You know what? At least they're stored, and you're preserving them. I just can't get the gloves out. But your next step that you might want to take when you're looking at your collection, when you're showing your collection off to your family or your friends or other collectors, you might want to put on a pair of white cotton gloves. Simple. You know, it doesn't seem like an awful lot, but the oils, and I don't know, I put on perfume before I came today, and I'm sure I touched my neck. I'm sure I put my hands in my hair because I tend to do that all the time. So all of that, all the things that you touch, or wipe the sweat, or rubbed your nose on all of that, and then you reached for those stamps on that shelf, you're going to end up transferring some of that to the beautiful pieces that you're collecting and preserving. And I know it seems like it's not that big a deal, and it isn't because it's a small amount of transference, but over time, that adds up. And you never know what mold spores, what pieces that you've carried on your hands, what oils, how they're going to react with the different ink and pencil and paper of the items that you're collecting, and chemicals. So get yourself a pair of good cotton gloves. They're very inexpensive, and usually they come in a multi-pack from any of these purveyors. And start using them. They're going to get dirty too. So inevitably I end up, as some of our volunteers know, I end up playing with my hair with a glove on, and I go, no. So remember to take your gloves off when they start to get a little dirty, especially if you're looking at your stamps, but then you're going to look at your photographs. Well, then you're probably going to want to change gloves in between. It's a simple step. It doesn't cost you very much at all. And you know what? You can just throw them right in the laundry. I wouldn't use detergent that has a lot of additives. Anything that's labeled free, free of additives would be great. And if you wanted to add a little bleach, that would be good too. And usually the lifespan of the gloves is several years before they really start to wear. But if you're going to do it, I would get the multi-pack just so that you always have a fresh pair available when you're looking at your materials. So once you've done that, got yourself a pair of gloves, then you can start looking at your boxes. If you have textile and fiber arts, you're probably going to want a box in much, much larger pieces, but they didn't send me those because they're a lot more expensive. But you can get acid-free, lignin-free, pH-neutral boxes from any of the major archival purveyors, and you can store your wedding dresses. How many of you have wedding dresses you'd like to store? Okay, your wedding dresses, your family textile heirlooms, quilts, samplers. How many of you have samplers?
They're on the wall.
Oh, they're on the wall? Oh, that's nice. Well, see, I like living with my pieces
Yeah.
too, so yeah, it's not always fun to put them all away. But those can be should be put in a larger box and layered with acid-free tissue paper. And especially if you have quilts and larger, heavier dresses, Victorian or earlier, you're probably going to want to check your box 2 or 3 times a year just to change the way they're folded. It's a little thing. But over time, those creases can actually denigrate the dress, and depending on if there is a lot of beadwork or other material on top of your dress, there's going to be weight issues. So you're going to want to shift that dress around so the weight on the dress doesn't cause irreparable harm, and so that the beads don't start to move. A lot of people, and see, I just touched my hair with the gloves. Guilty as charged. A lot of people tend to hang their beautiful dresses in plastic enclosures or their wedding dresses in the closet, and I think that's a great thing to do. I think that's, it's wonderful that you're trying. But unfortunately, a lot of our heavier dresses, even our quilts, if they're hung in snaps, I've seen quilts stored in hanging rows in closets with snaps on top. The thread is going to start pulling. So little bit by little bit, your dresses, your quilts, your samplers, if they're hung incorrectly, the weight of those pieces are going to pull down, and all the little seams, like the seams in my sweater, are going to start splitting. We have a very unfortunate closet upstairs in the Ryder house that we had to vacuum out last year. We were very fortunate. We got a grant from Union Savings Bank a few years ago to transfer all of our quilt collection and a large majority of our dress collection into archivally safe boxes. And it had been up until that point hung. But unfortunately, this one closet had a beautiful collection of morning wear. And when we took the dresses out, the floor was littered with the jet beads.
Oh.
I know, it was painful, very painful. So anyway, we vacuumed them up and we have them stored, and at some point, if we have a volunteer who very much is into the needleworks, we will ask he or she to maybe try and work on that for us. So, you know, the damage that we can do when we're trying to preserve is not always irreparable. It can be repaired. So if you make a misstep or your things have been stored incorrectly for years, don't worry about it. We can fix it going forward. So, the archival boxes. You stored your thing, your items, whatever they are, in the middle of your house. You're using gloves to play with your pieces. You're probably putting them in an archivally safe box. And just to let you know, Gaylord has started shifting to one sales. Previous to this, most of the big companies like Rodart and Gaylord and Light Impressions sold in batches of like 5 or more. So that got to be a little expensive. But if you ever want to buy just one piece, and sometimes you can find most of them sold now for one piece, but not all the boxes, you can call the museum, and if we're doing an order, we'll order for you. We're happy to split an order with you. We've done that for lots of people in the past. We don't always have the money to order. But if we can get enough of you together who want a specific type of box or piece, then we'll put the order in for you. Okay, so you have your box. And if you had a single piece of paper, would you put it in there?
It'll probably all curl up in the bottom.
Exactly. And see, that's why most of our preservation efforts are intuitive. You all knew that, right? So you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't put a single piece of paper in here. You would probably rather purchase some of these items. Okay. And I happened to pull the photo kit, but the photo and the document kit are very similar. And they have these wonderful folders that you can use. Now, in an ideal world, everything we had at the Danbury Museum and Historical Society would be stored separately in a folder inside a sheet of what I would call archival plastic. And this would be for negatives. I'll pass these around. You guys will take a look. Negatives here, smaller images. More negatives. So it would be stored inside one of these many types of plastic covers and then stored individually and labeled. How many of you have labeled everything you have in the collection? Okay. Not everybody. So you're going to want to make sure when you're labeling that you don't use a marker, that you don't use a pen. It would be really great if you could use a number 2 pencil. I know that's a really simple thing too, but you'll find that if you're asked, how many of you do a lot of genealogy work? Okay. How many of you have been asked at genealogy libraries to surrender your pens before you go in?
Yeah.
Yes, along with your license and a piece of hair for identification. That's got a little crazy. But oftentimes you'll find that when you're doing work in an archival library or an archivally conscious institution, you'll be asked to surrender your pens for good reason. Pens contain so many different kinds of ink, and they can be reactive in so many different ways, and they can eat through paper, they can eat through, the ink inside can eat through photographs and daguerreotypes. So have that number 2 pencil handy, and after you encase your piece in plastic and put it in a nice, strong, archivally safe folder, and put it in your box, make sure they're all labeled. I can't tell you, and this is a sad fact, how many people have come to the museum in the 12 years I've been working there with beautiful pictures that their family has passed down through the years. Gorgeous. They have no idea who's in them. And they think they're of Danbury, but they're not sure. You know, and so oftentimes, if it's an outdoor scene, we can generally help them narrow it down. But I'd hate to see the next generation lose the information that you have at your fingertips. So get that number 2 pencil out and start labeling. Although some people like to do and and we do this at the museum too, we do the paper labels, and Gaylord will sell the non-reactive paper labels. They're good and they're not good, because depending on where you store your items, if there's a lot of heat, that little adhesive can flock right to the floor. I'll tell you a little, another one of our little horror stories. When we were renovating and restoring the Ryder House, which is one of, it's actually I think my favorite building in our collection. It's our 1785 building. It's right on Main Street. It's gray. Used to be red. For those of you who've been at Danbury for quite some time, you'll remember it as the big red house on Main Street. When we were renovating Ryder, we had to take everything out because we basically brought the building down to stud. And we moved the entire collection that was stored in the Ryder House over to Huntington Hall. And as we did that, we kept finding these tiny little stickers on the floor.
Oh.
Yeah, very painful. And because about 20 years ago, 40 years ago, and 50 years ago, we identified our pieces with an accessioning number that was written on a tiny little sticker and put on the back of the piece.
Oh.
And over the years, the adhesive dried up, the sticker floated to the ground, and as the sunlight came in, it erased what was written on the stickers.
Oh.
Oh, a tremendous amount of work fixing that. So, you know, hindsight's 20/20. Now we accession in a slightly different way. And this goes part and parcel with what I was telling you about labeling. I don't know how many of you have used an accessioning program. Okay. How many of you have numbered the objects in your collection for insurance reasons or just to keep track of them? There are lots of ways that you can keep track of your collection, and I think one of the nicest ways is to create some sort of registration methodology. So there are tons and tons of books on registration out there. There are lots of different ways to do it. But I think it's important, even in our small collections. My husband thinks I'm crazy. I'm going around putting things on my, I collect milk glass is one of the things I collect. But I have numbers on all my milk glass pieces, and I know how many pieces I have currently at 36. But it's important because sometimes you lose track. Do you have double of the same piece? Do you remember, did I get that piece? If you have a gigantic postcard collection, you could have 3 or 4 or more of the same item and not remember because your postcard collection is so large. So I would suggest that if you are interested in it, that you create some sort of register for yourself. You can either do it in a notebook. You don't have to go high tech. You can write a description, pick a number, and label your piece. Or you can go a little bit more high tech, and how many of you use Access, or how many of you use the computer? Okay, so you can do a spreadsheet. You can use Excel is super. You know, you can do something with a very simple spreadsheet to keep track of the items that you have in your collection. And I don't know about you, but I'm hoping that the next generation down who tells me he doesn't like historic buildings can't be my child. But yes, he's young still. So, you know, I'm hoping that the next generation down will be able, if I passed away 50, 60 years from now, they'd be able to look at my register and say, oh, those are all the pieces of milk glass. This is where she collected it. Oh, that's an interesting story. That's how much she paid for it? You know, details like this can enhance your collection and your understanding of the piece and might help the next generation down appreciate it just as much as you do. One of the more complex types of registration that you could do would be to purchase software like PastPerfect. You heard of PastPerfect? PastPerfect is museum registration software that the American Association of State and Local Histories commissioned the creation of many years ago. And now most of us in this area, and I include Newtown, I'm not sure about Newtown actually, but Brookfield for sure, New Milford, the Danbury Museum, we're all starting to use PastPerfect. And it's a wonderful way. You can even take a photograph of the piece in your collection, and digitally you can put that in, and it can be clipped to your registration page. And it's a wonderful way to keep track of your collection in a visual way, especially if you don't want to unbox it. I'm thinking of those postage stamps again. You might not want to take them out and handle them all the time. They are fragile pieces. So, you know, if you've taken a photograph, you know, of your piece and you have it in your software and you can look at it because you wanted to look something up, or you're writing, I don't know how many of you write about the pieces that you collect, whether it's a family genealogy or whether it's for publication in type of magazine. If you're collectors of the Bell Society, there are 2 different Bell Societies, and there are multiple magazines that come out each year. So perhaps you write for them, and you might want to use photographs, and this would save you the trouble of unwrapping your items. But I digressed a little bit. So back to the box, back to storing these. Now, say you only have like 5 or 6 pieces that you want to store. Only a few pieces of ephemeral. So they're not going to stand up straight in this box, correct? So you're going to want to get a block, and they sell these at Gaylord and the other places as well. And it's just a simple block of archival cardboard, which is not really cardboard, but a block of archival pH neutral stuff that's the same this is made out of. And that will block it and help it stand up straight. In some cases, lying down flat is better for your specific archival piece, but we tend to get people to move away from that. Sometimes lying down flat is great if you're trying to straighten something out for a little bit, or perhaps you'd like to get the curl out of some edges. But over time, thank you, if you have too many books on top of each other, or you have too many pieces of paper on top of each other, they can weigh down and actually cause creases and damage to the bottom level. So generally, we suggest that you have your items standing up. Oh, I love this.
And there's another piece of paper on the other side. I don't know if that's right, if I should do that or not, but.
This is great. Mary Ellen was generous enough to bring along some of her pieces. And see, I'm happy to handle this one. That one, I don't know if I want to touch because I did play with my hair with the gloves on. I caught myself. But this is beautiful. And you
That
did
has the
super-
cardboard, so I thought you can pass it around.
You can all say that this is a beautiful piece of ephemera, 2 pages. And am I correct in this is a deed of sale?
I have a lot of those.
Beautiful handwriting at the bottom, beautiful signatures. And she did a great job. Now, she actually managed to increase the worth of her archival materials by using both sides. Okay? And this probably sits in a flat archival or stand-up archival? No? Okay. I'm sure it's not in the sun, though.
It will be.
And maybe it's in a drawer, but that's okay, it's a first step. And you'll notice that she put it in a lovely piece of archival plastic right here, but it's not sealed. You'll notice that all the pieces that I passed around, they didn't seal. Why do you think that is?
Maybe breathe.
They need to breathe. You know, these are, in a way, they're living documents because they tell us a story. But if we sealed them up, we would create a microenvironment. And you never know what's on that piece or what's in that air that got into that microenvironment. You will find in some of the archival catalogs that there are like Ziploc bags. I suggest you don't buy those. You know, it's for those of us in the museum profession, and we wouldn't use them at the Danbury Museum because we don't have a perfectly climate-controlled, or what I would consider, Bridgefield Historical does. If you've ever been downstairs into there, oh, beautiful, beautiful, so jealous. But they did a wonderful job creating the Scott House and creating that archival room downstairs. And so they would probably be safe in using the sealed ones at the top. But for most of us, I would say stay away. You're just, you're begging for trouble. Now, can I look at the daguerreotypes?
Sure.
Okay.
Put them on backward.
Backward. I did. Put them backwards. There you go. Good idea. Well, I think that might have some of the same issues though, because I had all my oils from the inside.
Yes.
I'll just very carefully pick it up. I promise not to put it in my hair anymore. This is awesome. I love one of our best collections at the Danbury Museum. We have so many sub-collections. Is our photographic collection, and we have daguerreotypes, ambrotypes, cyanotypes, all sorts of types, tintypes in the museum's collection, and all of them have separate conservation and preservation issues. In a perfect world, we would have them all wrapped in archival tissue and put in an envelope that was sealed with archival string and wrapping, and then individually put in with the label But it's not a perfect world, so we have a bunch stacked in boxes. But this is beautiful. And you can see this daguerreotype has a lot of damage. One of the things about photographs that you might want to consider doing, if you have historic photographs that you'd like to preserve and protect for the next generation, it's definitely worth going to Northeast Document Conservation Center and spending the money. It's also worth doing to go to some place like Visual Impact in Danbury to have them photograph, your image, and correct the flaws in the new piece. So you're saving the piece from the past, and you're not spending an awful lot more money to preserve the newer image. Is it the original? No, but it's something that might last for another several generations.
And then you can enjoy it.
Exactly, and then you can enjoy it, because really, those of us who are collectors, the primary object really isn't to put stuff away, or you don't see it. You want to play with it, you want to enjoy it.
Can you Photoshop the daguerreotype? Can you scan them and then Photoshop them?
I think you're better off shooting them, but you can scan them. I wouldn't necessarily, excuse me, I wouldn't necessarily recommend scanning through the glass. I mean, the image is actually, the image is on the glass. To me, the scanning light can somewhat be a little bit more detrimental. If that's your only option, then okay. If it's not your option and you have other options to get it photographed somewhere, or or get it treated and preserved and conserved, that would be great. The thing about preservation and conservation is that we'd all like to do as much as we possibly can to keep our treasures, our historic pieces safe. But anything we do is better than nothing. And you have all taken the first step to do something amazing to your collection because you're here and you're learning a little bit more about what you can do, what practices you can take, what methods you can use. But, inevitably things degrade. So the best you can hope for is to slow that degradation. And that's why putting things in the boxes and learning more about preservation care is so important. Now, did anybody have questions for me? Yes?
We have some old pictures in, I guess they're daguerreotypes or whatever, but they're in albums with like the velvet
Yes,
covers.
I've seen that before. That's nice.
Would you
Probably
put the
types.
whole thing into an archival box?
You could do
So you
several
hate
things.
to take them out,
I would hate to take it out.
because that's half the charm is having them in the original.
And that's something you all have to weigh. How far are you willing to go? Best case scenario, you would take them all out and you would store them individually and you would store them in an archivally safe box, labeled.
Mhm.
But you want to enjoy your piece. So I would say that the best, if you would like to keep looking through your piece the way that it is, then you would probably wrap it in. I wouldn't leave it out on a table.
Right.
I would wrap it in
No.
archival tissue and put it in one of the archival boxes. And because of the weight, I think I know the type of piece you're talking about.
Yeah, they are.
They tend to slip down in their little
Yeah,
their
they slip
pockets.
down into.
Right. So I would maybe flip it on its side and let it rest on its back for a little
Yeah,
bit.
we got it from my in-laws,
Neat.
who had it, I don't know where in the house, but,
And that's such a treasure, having those images from the past, that
Luckily,
connection.
most of them are labeled. They actually wrote
That is truly a treasure.
who these people were.
That's neat. I would say go through the Gaylord catalog or any catalog of your choice, and you can find them all online as well. You can do a search for document preservation, and the big guys will all pop up. They all have sales, so if you want to wait until you can, get a sale coupon, or until like Gaylord is having a massive sale, usually they have one in the spring. You might want to wait a little bit if you're buying in volume. Does anybody else have questions? Yes.
I have an old tintype that is turning black. Is there any way to bring back the image from that?
There is a chemical process that can help halt that and maybe bring some of the image back. I would say you could call the 1-800 line for Northeast Document Conservation Center and see. Northeast Document Conservation Center would be a more appropriate place to do that. Or, excuse me, or you could have a photograph taken of
I tried that and it just turns out black.
Yeah, I would call Northeast and see what kind of chemical processing they could do and what they would charge you for that. That's a little bit beyond, you know, what you could probably do at home. For anyone at home, I would absolutely advise you don't play with the chemicals. There are a lot of sites online that will tell you how to navigate the chemical processing of lots of different things, how to clean lots of different pieces. I am always leery of that, always leery. You know, I think that there are professionals amongst us for a reason. There are people who have studied for many, many years to be very good at what they do, whether it's preservation of fiber arts, restoration of paintings, etc. And generally not the best thing for the amateurs among us, and I would include myself in that. And if I had your piece, I probably would send it away to be conserved.
Yes.
Thank you
My
so much,
father-in-law
Marielle.
has made a beautiful photograph album, you know, that black paper? He mounted the pictures in corners, but you can't turn those pages to black, is just, paper is breaking. Is there any way, do I have to take out all those pictures and store them individually?
Yes, I know. My mother-in-law has the same type of thing, and they're beautiful. And in their case, it was written at the bottom of each
Right,
one, not on the
right.
back. So, you know, that's a project that my husband and I are waiting to do at some point. But unfortunately,
can't
yes,
say.
the paper is going to really start to corrode over the next
You
decade.
couldn't slip each one of those pages into a square.
You could, but I think inevitably you're going to end up taking all the pictures out. You know, you could put them in the sleeves for now. You know, that might be a good placeholder until you have a little bit more time on your plate to address it. But I think you're going to have to do it.
I just love the book, you know,
I
you lose
know.
part, that's part of the history of it.
We have beautiful scrapbooks at the museum that people in town were keeping for years and years. Of some of them are just about the Danbury Fair. Some of them are about just obituaries. Some are just dances. They're super. But they used glue, you know, on the backs of the newsprint, which older newsprint has a higher linen content. I can tell you that the copy of the 1872 Farmer's Journal that we have at the museum has such a high linen content. It's gorgeous. You could pick that thing up and read it. It's beautiful. The paper's in great shape. The one from the 1940s, which has much less linen, has hardly any linen. It's all wood pulp. They're disintegrating around us. But what we do with the scrapbooks at the museum, we want to preserve that information. We want to preserve someone's collection because they took the time to do that. But the only way for us to really do that is to take the sleeves out, take the pages out, photocopy onto acid-free paper those articles and those pieces that were around here, and then keep it in a separate folder because inevitably the glue is going to continue to be through. Yes.
On old photographs like that may be in some type of a frame or are those framed, is it better off to take the photos out of the frame because of what the frame may or may not contain?
Sticky wicket. I mean, do you enjoy looking at it while they're in the frame? I mean, the frames are beautiful,
Oh, a
and
lot of
oftentimes
them.
they have the cover, which sometimes it's Bakelite cover with beautiful detail on the outside, and it seems a shame to remove it. If it's something that you and your family enjoy looking at all the time the way it is, then you might want to keep it together. But if you are willing to go to a little extra expense and have the image copied in a variety of different ways, that way you can display the image and maybe keep that set aside, you might be better off. I don't necessarily, sometimes removing them from their protective covering is more detrimental,
But
because.
you have no idea what that's made of or what chemical.
Exactly. So it's a dance. It's how much money do you want to put into it? How much use does it receive in your own home the way it is currently? And how do you wish to display it for the future? Questions that I think each of us has to answer separately before you can decide what to do with the piece.
Some of them are even stuck to the quote-unquote glass,
Yes.
so then you
And
really have a
sometimes,
problem.
right, and you don't know that until you start taking it apart. At that point now, you got problems. Yes.
I have more recent photographs from the 50s and 60s that I found at my dad's house in the basement in a stack, and they're all stuck together. How do you unstick them? I don't know what's in there, and he was
Depends on how, heat, moisture.
Can you repeat what
I
she
brought
said?
them.
She has a whole stack of photographs from the 1940s and the 50s that are all stuck together. Yeah, I have a lot of good things to tell you. I'm sorry. Can I look?
They're like from the 50s, 60s, probably 70s. I don't know what's in them, so,
Well, you can take an X-Acto knife.
I tried.
Tried. Oh, you've tried?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not
I
good.
tried, right.
Do we think it was they have glue on the back, or do you think
No,
it's
it's
just
just the photograph, it's the finish on the photograph.
Yeah, they
Because they were stored in the basement.
You can bring them someplace, and I'm just using Visual Impact because we've used them at the museum, someplace like Visual Impact or Connecticut Photography, Connecticut Photographic, and see if they could separate them.
Mhm.
This is a step beyond the home conservation that we've been talking about.
Mhm.
There are some chemical I so badly want to stick my hands in
They're
here,
all
but I'm not going to do it.
They're not gonna harm me.
So, yeah, I think you'd have to go to a professional for this one. You could try, but if you try to separate them yourself with an X-Acto knife, you're going to probably do more damage.
Yeah.
Worth going to professionals, see if they can give you a quote that you can live with, and see if they can separate. They might not be able to.
Yeah.
It could be the chemical processing with the addition of maybe they were, I don't know, posted in a,
I just don't know what's
you know,
there,
an envelope,
whether it's anything worth keeping or whether
see, that's
it's not.
that's a gamble.
Yeah.
Yeah. If these were in one of those sticky albums and then were taken out of the sticky album, thrown in the bat, or, thrown somewhere, then you've got glue, you have the chemical processing that was used to create these, you've got heat and humidity working their way on these photos for decades. You might not be able to unstick them at all, but again, it's worth a professional opinion to see. You can always say no.
Yeah. Talking about the sticky albums, I have photos in sticky albums from 30 years ago.
I would start trying to take them out. The longer we leave them
They
in there.
don't come out easily. Is there a way to unstick them? Because they're fading. They're definitely fading.
Okay. Is the glue, can you already see the glue? Or the sticky
You don't see
coming
the
through
glue,
them?
no. But the pictures themselves are fading because they're not acid-free.
Right. I think you're better off getting those scanned, if you
Okay.
can. Those are
Mhm.
modern photos. Get them scanned, and you might want to work with the scans and clean that up rather than the original. You might end up losing the original because if they're already so tight that you can't get them out,
Yeah.
that might already be a lost cause.
How about, I have newspapers from World War II that were in a cedar chest since World War II ended. And they're folded. What do you do with something like that?
Unfold them, lay them flat, put acid-free tissue between each page.
Okay.
Okay, and you can get the acid-free tissue from any of these different places, and they come in very large sheets. So I would take one of the large sheets, almost so that you can see the edge of the white around the newspaper, and put it in between all the different newspaper pages. And then they have archival boxes specifically for our large papers that you could put them in, and those you would have to lie flat. You can also put them in what are called in the map holders if you had a couple different ones, and then of course label the outside so that you know what's in there. But definitely put the archival between each and have them laid out, because the longer they're creased, the more damage gets done, and the more you're not going to read those creased areas. But you take that step now, and 20 years from now, they might be in good enough shape that someone else can enjoy them. Or 40 years, 50 years.
I do have a quilt that I have on a quilt hanger, which is about that big around, so it's not pinched or anything. If I move it every so often, would that help? I don't want to leave it hanging on the same
Yeah.
threads, but I do like having it out. And I don't have it in sunlight, it's
So
on
I
a
would
wall.
move it as much as you can. You want, you're doing the right thing. You're avoiding the sunlight because it's going to fade the quilt.
Yeah,
It's going to
that I
fade the
do.
colors in the fabric. The stress on the top is going to continue though.
Mhm.
Do you have is it a folded quilt stand? or
No,
is it
it's on the wall.
So there's a sleeve on the back of your quilt that it went through?
No, it's just over.
It's just over.
Over the
Okay.
wood.
It had to have it attached?
No, it's just hanging loose.
Okay, well, see, that's good. So, like you said, if you just keep incrementally changing the place where there's a lot of stress, then your quilt hopefully will not have a crease. Although, you can take a break. What we've done with our quilts is we put a few out at a time, and then we put them away so that not, you know, they're not always receiving the same amount of environmental stress.
Okay.
And with your piece, you might want to do that too. Maybe you want to fold it up next year and bring a different quilt out.
Good idea.
And just get a break. It's a vacation.
Yeah.
Vacation for your artifacts.
It may also be time to get it cleaned, very gentle
Well-
soap, like ivory.
Depending on the environment, you know, if you're a smoker, we didn't even cover that because you know what's so funny because most people aren't anymore, so
But
we
this-
hardly talk about that as much as we used to 20 years
But
ago.
it may have come from a house where they were smoking.
Well, for years it was boxed up.
Oh, okay.
So my
So
mother had
probably-
it and I inherited it. But I want to look at
I
it.
want to live with it, right?
I have one question regarding the book. I
Yes.
have one treasured book. It's an old dictionary
Mhm.
that my dad wrote, and but the spine is kind of, I really hate moving it because, you know, should I just put that in an
Yes.
archival box?
Absolutely. Wrap it in tissue, and you can, there's archival, almost like ribbon, and you can use it. In fact, there's a couple different things in there that'll show you how to fold the ribbon around and tie it. That'll help keep the edges together so it doesn't distort. You know, sometimes when you have a book standing up or a book lying down, you know, it starts to distort a little bit, the binding starts to move and shift. So you want to keep that as tight as you possibly can.
Okay, stand it upright.
You can stand it upright, or if you buy a single box, you can have it by itself, and then just remember to gently flip it over.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, she's had her hand up for a while, I'm sorry, but,
Question, I have several items I'd like to display,
okay.
and actually, one thing we just took out this morning was an old suitcase filled with postcards and things like that my husband's mother collected. If I wanted to take some of those and display, what would be the best thing to do? Because I know there's the shadow boxes, there's all different things, and obviously I wouldn't keep it in the sun, but just to kind of break up the collection, to give some to different people in the family, it would be nice just instead of handing it.
There are frames and glass that you can buy that actually cut down on the UV damage that the piece underneath that's being displayed is exposed to. So even though it's not in direct sunlight, even
Right.
just having it out, there's still going to be, you know, some sort of effect over time. So you can buy the frames that have the UV glass, and there's a whole lot. There's all different levels.
Are
you know, that out
those
there.
available like in the Gaylord catalog?
I
or
can't
at a-
remember if they're in the Gaylord catalog, but I know you can just go online and look for that. If you're going to do, the shadow boxing sounds fun. You know, everything that you talked about is more of an aesthetic choice.
Right.
You know, so however you choose to display it, as long as you make sure it's not in direct sunlight, try to cut down on the amount of UV and other detrimental rays that are hitting the piece, and maybe change it out. You know, if you have a whole box full,
Mhm.
then it might be time for a vacation every couple months for the ones that have been out on display. You know, these pieces that we hold and trust for, you know, as part of our collection or for the next generation, you know, we try and do the best we can with them. But we want to enjoy them too. So
Right.
having it out and having it part of your family in as safe as way as possible sounds great to me.
I have two different questions. I have a 1800s leather Bible, and the leather is powdery.
Okay.
Is there anything to treat it?
There are treatments available, but that takes, you know, there are some things in the catalog that you can do with leather.
Yeah.
My inclination is to go to a professional for that. I get nervous doing treatments myself. I don't feel that I have the background to do that adequately or appropriately. So my suggestion would be to get a quote from a professional to treat the leather. You know, there are some simple things that Gaylord and the other magazine, the other companies could sell you.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt to get a quote, and if you're not comfortable with that, then you can take a step back, you know, and see what they suggest. But that's a little bit more problematic. You know, you want to kind of stop that deterioration. You want to halt it.
Right. The other one, we were talking about the black paper photographs, a collection from the 1900s, and they wrote in white,
Yep.
and it's all disappearing.
Copy it right now. Go home. Don't stop for lunch on the way. Get that book out. Put it on the kitchen table. Get your number 2 pencil handy, and start copying it now. Because bringing that back, the paper itself, these that we're talking about, is already starting to corrode. And so you're gonna, every day that goes by, every month, every week, every year, you're gonna start losing a little bit more of that information. It's
All right,
gonna
there's
start-
no special light trick or,
Oh, there is, but it's that's, again, that's a professional job, and that's not gonna be inexpensive. Especially if you have an entire album with that, It all depends on how much money you wanna spend. If you wanna go a less expensive route, I wouldn't stop at the stop sign, I would just go right home and just do it. Tell the police I told you that. Just kidding, don't do that. Stop and follow all the rules for safety reasons. But when you do get home, I would start trying to do that as soon as you can, unless you're willing to spend the money to bring it somewhere to have it brought back and conserved. And sometimes that doesn't work. It all depends on the way that it was written, what time period, B, what chemicals were in whatever it was written with, how the paper's reacting, the environment it was stored in. So it might be that you could spend that kind of money and not get the return. You might just get a stabilization, which is a lot of what conservation and preservation is really just that stabilizing the deterioration at a level that we're all comfortable with. Most times it can't be brought back.
A good magnifying glass may help.
Yes, that's a great idea, yes.
Do you have a good place for cleaning up oil paintings?
I don't know a good oil conservator at the moment, but I'm sure that if you contacted the American Association of Museums, AAM, they could give you 100,000 names, across the country, but you might want to, specifically in this area. There are major conservation societies across the United States who could very well advise you as to who would be a good oil conservator. I don't know anyone offhand. But when you find out, let me know, because we have some issues with one of our paintings over at the Ryder House. So
Okay.
maybe get a 2-for-1.
Swap.
Yes.
It might not be your area expertise. What do you do with a bunch of old Kodachrome slides?
Oh, turn them into prints.
Hmm?
Can you turn them into prints?
I haven't, but that would be one thing I
Or
could do.
digitize them.
Yep, you can bring them to a place like Visual Impact or any of the other studios in the area and get a price to turn, not everyone does it, but turn those slides into prints, and then you can live with the prints. You can also have it done digitally, so that you have this beautiful digital collection. You can watch it on your TV, you can look at it on your computer. If they're in good shape, they're probably going to stay in good shape for quite some time, but you're going to start losing that technology to view the
Yeah,
items.
I've lost, I don't have an operative slide projector anymore.
And I can tell you that that is a problem for us at the museum as well. When the bulbs burn out, for some of them, their replacements they're very hard to come by. And that's a whole different topic of conversation, how we've morphed with our technological needs. I'll give you an example of what happened to us at the museum. Years ago, about 8 years ago, it was all zip disks. Zip disks were going to be the storage location for the world. Everybody was going to use the zip disk. So we started scanning our collection and putting them on the zip, putting them on the zip, putting them on the zip. How many of us use the zip disk for a drive? Nobody. Technology passed us by like that. So it's an ongoing concern in the world of document preservation as to how to preserve it for the next generation in a digital manner. So for yours, because you're going to start losing the technology to be able to watch or look at your slides, I would have them turned over now into a different format, whether you're scanning them and putting them on
I have
CD
a
or...
problem now selecting. I have 1,000, and I don't want to spend the money
There are
for
places.
1,000.
There are places online. Are you good with the computer?
Yeah, it's not so bad.
Okay. If you go online, there are places that you can send. Some of them are reputable, some are not. I don't
Yeah.
feel comfortable recommending any
I'm
of
gonna
them
have
now.
to select.
But they can do it at a much lower price too. But again, it's worth your time and energy, I think, to go around to the local photographic studios and see if they can
Besides,
get a
every
price.
time you see those from 10 years ago, for a short time, you live back 10 years ago, right?
Mhm.
A little nostalgia value.
Absolutely. You wouldn't want to lose something like that.
What?
One, two, and then three. And then we're gonna-
Just a quick comment, we have movies of my brother's family watching slides now.
Yeah.
They took, somebody was sitting in the back of the room, taking a move, you know, a video,
Oh, that's funny.
while he was showing his own kids who are now adults with their own kids, slides of when they were little, and the grandchildren are laughing hysterically at
That's
their
right.
parents. But I thought that was really funny that we now have that. And probably they're on VHS, which they have to now get changed.
Right.
You know?
How fast it changes,
I'm
yes.
just gonna say, Picture Magic in Ridgefield, opposite where Kohl's is, you can take your slides there. I mean, I'm afraid to send my slides to India or wherever.
I
I
understand
won't do that. So
Yeah.
Picture Magic, they usually say they'll charge like 99 cents a picture, a slide,
Yeah.
but if you bring them a whole pile, they'll do them for much less for you.
Rich does the
Picture
same thing.
Magic in Ridgefield, it's right opposite where that Kohl's shopping center.
But your other trick would be to buy a light box.
Mhm.
My husband has a light box so that he can see his slides, and that way, you know,
Yes, it's, yes.
well, he's having trouble collecting them,
Yeah.
you can't get to see them.
There are light boxes in the Gaylord, there's a real nice one in there too, in the Gaylord catalog, but you're right, that's a good option.
They can choose.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for inviting me to come chat with you guys today, and it's been a lot of fun. I've loved learning about your collections. So I'd like to invite you to come down to the Danbury Museum. We're doing tours now from 10 to 4 on Saturdays. When our college students come back, we'll be open again to do tours during the week and on the weekends. And of course, we have a brand new exhibit that's going to be opening up in June. We're putting it up this month, but for April and May, we tend to do an awful lot with the Danbury Public Schools. So unless you want to tour with 73rd graders on a daily basis, I would suggest you might wait till the grand opening in June. It's called, our new exhibit will be called Magnificent Millinery, and it's 3 centuries of women's hats in the Danbury area, and it's really, really great. I do say so myself. We've had a huge number of volunteers working on this. Some absolutely stunning photographs from by local photographer Kathy Benaria, and it's really quite something to see. So hopefully you all have a little time this summer to come down, take a tour of the buildings, and view our new exhibit. And I did promise the guys I would do sports and Danbury history next year. Last year was wedding dresses, and I think I'm floating a little to the feminine side. So hopefully next year you'll come by and visit us as well. So thank you again, you've been wonderful.
One little
Yeah.
thing, tomorrow at 3:30,
Oh, yes,